Crossway Youth Podcast. We're back. Back on your screen, but in a different room today. We're moving some things around. It's very exciting.
Still got some fake plants over here,
Some fake plants. Plants? What do you say?
Plants.
I'm a plant guy.
Plants.
Oh, yeah, I'm strongly plant.
I don't know why you say plant. I was like, you say plant for
I will
sure.
plant that flag and die on that hill.
Plant.
Plant. Dance.
Yeah,
Plant,
I was going to say Lachie says
Castle or a
dance.
castle?
Castle.
I think that's my
the only non-Canadian castle I know.
That makes no sense.
Yeah, what did you just say?
As in, the only people I know who say castle are Canadian. And Ben is the only non-Canadian person I know who says castle.
Ben should be renamed in some sort of group chat as the only, non-Canadian castle or something now, just with no context.
He is
wait
very
for his
tall.
reaction. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Anyways, aside from potato, we're going to be having a bit of a chat about some... Did you guys ever do it by the acronym? Do you guys ever... Sorry, this is about news. I realize I started talking about context without providing it. About news, did you guys ever get the thing in primary school that you got told that it was news stood for...
Something. What does it stand for?
No.
Are you asking us what it stands for?
What does news stand for? You have to work together.
Not.
New.
Oh, wait. I think you're right.
New. I want it to be NI so I can say information.
Something about reliable.
New.
No,
except
News.
They are already losing.
That's how the Aussies say it. News.
World.
Yeah?
Broadcast.
Yeah, new world. You know the silent B in the word news? Yeah.
New B.
Views.
Clearly we're good at spelling.
But it doesn't actually stand for anything, just to clarify.
I didn't feel like it did.
No,
because it's come from a newspaper.
Did you? What did you hear that it said that stood for, Sam?
I'm pretty sure weather and sports are the W and S. I think is entertainment.
Entertainment, I think.
And the N of news is news.
I think so. Yeah.
I hate that. Be better.
It was just a primary school acronym.
Making an acrostic poem for Brooke, and the B stands for Brooke. No.
That is a classic though. And then it's just recursive acrostic poems. Just dunk, 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 dunk. Nice. Anyways, to kick us off, I thought we'd just get to know you guys again, because you haven't been on in a minute. It's been a second since you guys have been on.
A few minutes,
in a hot minute.
A few minutes. It is getting warmer, that's true. So speaking of news, I thought we'd just ask you a question. And this is, we were having a secret, not a secret. We were having a chat the other day, and it's kind of similar to this. But if you had to show up on the front page of a newspaper, what would you want it to be for?
It's a good question.
I do not remember having this conversation.
Neither do I.
It's inspired by another conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Local woman saves puppy from disaster.
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, if it is it me?
Yeah,
Am I me?
What are your
I'm not
pictures
like a
on the front
Nobel
page?
Prize winner.
No, you can be anything
Well,
there,
what
right?
would you want to be front page newsworthy for? Kind of what would you want to be
for
famous
saving a puppy?
The next female Einstein. If
Yeah,
we're going to
true.
make stuff up,
Yeah.
but realistically, I'm going to save a puppy.
You can't.
Like me currently is going to go out and chase a puppy. Imaginary Brooke is the next female Einstein.
And you can't get bad press for going and saving a puppy. That
It's
can't be twisted
real
negatively
tough.
at all. Try and
Really
put a
tough.
negative spin on someone saving a puppy from a tree or a burning building. You can't. It's impossible.
So, odds?
I don't know. I need more ideas, Sammy.
You're just going to go what he said.
I would like to break the world record in something. If I was the world record holder in anything, this is maybe another question.
But like a niche thing.
Yeah, I don't want it to be like, I don't know, most hot dogs eaten in 1 hour. That's the first world record that I can think of, Joey Chestnut. Maybe like most, it'd be golf related. It'd be like most golf balls hit in an hour or a day or a year or something.
But make it something that's convenient for your lifestyle too. So like most
I'd have
consecutive days of golf.
Maybe, yeah, so true.
Steph's like, I hate this.
Maybe I could take sabbatical for a year to complete this Guinness World Record and then come back and be
Surely there's
really
someone
good at
who's
golf.
played golf for more than a year straight. Like
There
every
definitely
day for a
would be.
year.
Tiger Woods.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Professionals play every day. This is not a golf podcast, but I
That's
would
like
like to be...
You would like it to be.
Yeah, the world record of the guy who went to the cinemas the most times in a year. And I was like, I think that's just not having hobbies.
I think you just have no life.
Did you hear? There was another guy. I think I saw this recently on the news, entertainment, weather, sports. Some guy rode a roller coaster non-stop for a week. I think it was around a week or something. And he was allowed every hour. He was allowed a 5-minute break. That was part of the rule. So he would group the 5-minute breaks into like a 30-minute slot or something, and then go to the toilet and eat and like cat nap and things like that.
If he was a gentleman, of male anatomy, he could probably do a wee on a roller coaster
100%.
if there's no one below it.
100%.
But I would hate to be below that.
Yeah.
So just don't be below it.
Yeah. But as in, like, if you want to save that break for a later day.
That's so true, yeah.
Can you bring food on the roller coaster with you?
I don't know. We could ask Guinness World Records. Anyway, I'd like to break a Guinness World Record and be on the front cover. Is that enough time to think?
Yeah, it is. I'd like to either get on the news for being a really good player in a sport. Like netball.
Yeah.
Or win an award for Best Actress.
Ooh.
Heck yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
The next Margot Robbie.
Yeah.
Knew it.
Wow.
What type of movies would you be in? Would you be like a funny actress or like action movie? Like
No.
So what?
The horror in your voice.
Yeah, that's true.
No. Please. Anything.
Yeah.
Other than
I can
action.
be versatile, actually.
Okay. Wow.
That's why
That's why you won the award.
Yeah,
Yep.
because I'm a versatile actor. Comedy, horror.
Horror. Wow. Okay.
I don't know why, but my YouTube has been giving me, like, all the ads I see are just for horror movies, and I hate horror movies. So I don't know why it keeps coming up.
that.
YouTube is trying to lead
excuse
you
me.
towards exposure therapy to overcome your fear. Maybe YouTube is listening right now. But also Brooke's right. Just hide that and literally get rid of it.
Can't you say like, oh, I don't like this ad.
Yeah.
Please remove
That's my
this.
favorite function on Instagram, just going to specific ads. Like if it'll advertise a brand that I have some sort of aversion to, and I'll say, I don't like this. I don't like it.
No.
Please stop showing this
Throwing
in my
the
feed.
ad out of the cot.
Yeah.
Speaking of, no, I'm kidding. That's not actually the transition.
Okay.
It transitions into a later conversation, but not what we want to go first. So news, entertainment, weather, sports. That's so funny.
Isn't that your joke? Did
Yeah,
you
I was
just
like,
say
I don't know if you can say that after
Yeah.
your
my joke
acronym.
that I thought
Like
of
the
that
three
I
of us
said?
aren't laughing at the
It
moment.
is
funny at me.
Hilarious.
It's great, guys.
I'm really good. Like and subscribe.
But also do that. So how do you guys, just a few quick questions, a bit of a who, what, when, where, how, why of news. How do you guys engage with the news? What's your news platform of choice? Do you engage with the news? Etc.
etc. News consumption.
Yeah. What is that like?
So you're asking us like the how we engage with the
Are you
news.
are
the
you a
when,
news consumer?
The when we do. All those who
All the W and H questions that they teach you in primary school. Answer that about the news.
I feel like I'm a reformed news consumer.
Oh.
Or like
Ooh.
I went off and came. Well, when I was a PR intern, they made you read all 7 Victorian newspapers every morning to like look for either your clients or stories of interest for your clients. And so every single morning, 8:15 a.m., I was sitting at the big table in the office. I'd read every newspaper.
Physical
No way.
newspapers.
Physical newspapers would get delivered to the office.
Unreal.
And I'd read all of them. And so then once I left PR, I was like, I'm not reading the
I never
news.
want to see a newspaper in my life.
So now I'm very gently back into it.
Yeah.
Did you have
But
to wear
it's
a
like-
glove to like turn the pages so you didn't
No,
rip your
but you
hands
would
off?
get
You'd get, like,
you'd rub your
black
face
ink.
and get like
Yeah.
black on
Yeah,
your nose.
wow.
Yucky.
Yeah. So now the Daily Oz is like my very gentle, consumer friendly.
Mm.
Delivered to my inbox, 7 a.m. every day. Read through that. That's it.
So you're a news through email. Is that
News
what you
through
said?
email.
Wow.
I'm a fan.
I actually didn't know you could do that.
Well, let me sell it to you.
Use the news on your email.
I
Fascinating.
think if I refer you, I can get a Krispy Kreme voucher. So let me send you an email.
Send me an
No
email.
way.
Refer me. I don't read it there. Yeah. That's good though. That's kind of like anyway, I'll answer first, and then I will talk about the difference between like actively choosing to engage with the news versus just like passively having things come up. I am probably less intentional with my news consumption than like having something delivered to my email inbox. I have the New York Times app and the news.com app on my home screen on my phone, and I go on them in the mornings after I've read the Bible and prayed, and not before. And they're both kind of like like news.com's more like Australian specific news and things like that, and New York Times is kind of like what's happening around the world. Also has Wordle on it, so 2 birds, 1 stone.
Big fan.
2 words, 1 stone.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, and kind of like first thing in the morning as well, similar to you. Like I'll sit there and kind of go through that during the day, but then also kind of somewhat passively throughout the day as well, kind of waste time a bit on it. I like to learn and find out what's happening around the world, and so I do waste quite a lot of time looking at news that isn't necessarily relevant to me. But that's me, yeah. That's some of the who, what, when, where, hows, maybe 1 or 2 of them.
I am completely opposite. I actually don't actively engage with news whatsoever. Mine is probably more passive. Where I'll just like, if something is there on my Instagram feed, like I follow the Daily Oz, which by the way are amazing. They are top notch. So if you are not
Young
somehow
Aussie
following
journalists.
anything,
Shouts out to the Daily Oz.
I would go follow the Daily Oz on Instagram because they are incredible and their things are like evidence based, not just whatever they want to spiel out.
Daily Mail vibes.
Yeah, no. So they're good. But I would just like look on them just if they pop up on my feed, which they do quite a lot, because they do come up with lots of updates here and there. And then I've got the news app on my phone as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it. In high school though, in year 12, I would read the news every day because you had to do like an essay on like a piece or something. It was like about a controversial piece that was in the news, and it had to be in the news for the past 6 months. So then that was the only time when I would actively read the news every morning. ABC News.
What controversial topic did you pick?
I can't remember, but that's all I remember.
Yeah, wow. I guess I'll go as well because I'm also on this podcast. I am a casual news checker in that it's more like, and this is something that I'll talk about a little bit as well, or ask you guys, but I feel like a lot of the apps that I use, news articles just like appear on. So for example, I'm a big Twitter user or X user. I'm just going to call it Twitter till I die.
Forever hate it.
And a lot of like Twitter, I guess, is what you follow. So, I'll follow people that I want to see tweets from. X's. No, that's horrible. But also like follow a bunch of the news, like 7 News, 9 News, 10 News and stuff. So those all just pop up. So rather than like going out looking for news to read, it kind of shows up. And this is something interesting that I saw the other day. I think someone on Twitter mentioned it, saying that their Facebook is only like 10% the people they follow, and the rest of it is like news or ads or promotions. And it's like so much of what we're getting is just appearing on all of the apps we use.
I'm surprised it's 10%. I would have gone
less.
Like I actually would have gone less. Yeah.
Yeah.
Based off, I'm not sure what your guys is.
Because no one's on Facebook nowadays as
True.
well. So
that is true. Maybe I'm just old.
No, I'm okay with Facebook. I'm in the boat with you. It's all right.
But one of the things with like what news we're given is that it's not like, I'm not going to be like it's news is controlled by the social media apps or whatever. But to some extent, like we're only kind of being shown what we're shown. Whereas I guess if you go read a newspaper, you can then also go, I guess, pick and choose to some extent what you're reading.
Depending on the newspaper.
Depending on the newspaper, that is true. So I guess looking at that, so with apps and newspaper and news websites and the Instagram things and stuff, how do you guys choose what kind of news you engage with?
I think which is also based on like being in PR. That was very eye-opening for me, of realizing how much businesses can sell stories to the news. And like I was like 19 and could go in there and be like, yeah, my brand has launched this new product. I'm going to make a story of interest, email it to the journalist, and then the journalist would make that a news story, which made me a bit like skeptical to be like, how many other news stories are just brands coming up with stories about a thing? So that has made me be really specific about who I would consume news from. So I'm like, ABC, big fan, not owned by a wealthy corporation. And things like the Daily Oz, I'm like, independent journalists, big fan. Whereas as soon as you get into like
Daily
media
Mail.
corporations that are owned by other media corporations who have big business interests, I'm like, well, you want to make money from this story that you're telling me, and I don't want my news to be that.
They always have an agenda.
Yeah.
Right? And it is usually financially related. But
Yeah.
I've been quite big, and this is news related, but also just learning related as well, is trying to have it as a bit of a discipline to read things and consume things that I agree with, but then also deliberately read things that I don't agree with as well.
Yeah.
Not as I'm changing my mind drastically on things all the time, but it's important to be able to try to understand where people are coming from and how people can come to different opinions to you. Because I think like the news is so polarized at the moment and is only increasing in that way. People have very black and white different opinions on different things. But people can have different opinions and things and not be super polarized on it. There's an opportunity for healthy disagreement and healthy discourse to exist around a lot of stuff. So as an example, I read a book whilst I was away on a trip about someone who grew up in a church community, was questioning their sexuality, came out in their faith community as homosexual, and drifted away from the church and kind of had a pretty average experience as a result of that. And as a pastor of young people, where young people in our society are kind of frequently questioning their sexuality, and it's a pretty significant topic as well, I thought it was important to read something that was actually pretty challenging and confronting, because you're like, you're talking pretty negatively about the church, which I care a lot about, and you've had a pretty average experience, which isn't everyone's experience. But it was important for me to read that and to go, okay, from a pastoral standpoint, I want to be able to care for people who are going through things like that. And so it's healthy to be able to understand where people are coming from. Not that we necessarily end up agreeing with them, but to go, that's some people's experience, and it's important to do that. And I think sometimes the news can be helpful to kind of think, okay, how do you think differently on this? How do you think differently on that? Again, not because you're going to change your mind. And then there's some that are just like blackball, don't go anywhere near it because there's specific agendas towards it. But
it's the whole echo chamber thing of like, don't get so stuck in one set of opinions that you can't even hear other people's opinions. Or someone famous's quote of the mark of intelligence is being able to hold two opposing opinions in your mind and like still function with that. But like, it's okay to think this and that, or to be able to hear Audrey's opinion, which differs from my opinion, and be like, this is okay. So
I think Brene Brown attributes that to Barack Obama, and he says the mark of a leader, like the biggest mark of a leader, is the ability to hold two things in tension.
yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Anyway. I forgot what the original
Yeah,
question
I don't
was.
actually know what your original question
how
That's
do
why
you
I didn't answer. Sam
Audrey's
looked
like,
at me and I was like, I don't know what the question was.
No.
how do you choose what kind of news to engage with? Was the original question. But I love this tangent. I love the tangent.
We've got a few tangents that happen.
For me in uni, because I study health as well, part of it is about health literacy. And then there was like this one time where we got newspapers and we just kind of looked at it and was like, oh, what's interesting about this? You know, what stands out to you? And I don't think we actually realised, like me and my friends in that class realised until our friend And the lecturer told us as well what was interesting about it. So I think it would have been like Herald Sun, or actually it was all of them, like all big 7 of them, Herald Sun, Sydney, whatever. And the age, things like that. And basically it was during the Women's World Cup. And then running on that time was obviously AFL. And this was when Australia obviously had won like 2 games already. But they only got 1 page in the news, whereas all the other AFL games got 7 pages in the news. And I was like, oh, why did they do that? Like, we were just talking about the pros and the cons, and it's like then you turn into other news outlets like the Daily Oz or even The Conversation, and it's like they actually do a better coverage of all of the sports. And instead of giving 1 page, they gave like 7 posts for it. So it's just like, yeah, distinguishing what's actually, or how much of it can we consume appropriately.
Yeah, it's good.
Yep.
Everything is filtered through someone's opinion of what it should be. Like the Herald Sun is filtered through the opinion of what the editor believes the spread should be. Yeah. And even the Daily Oz is filtered through what the opinion of their editors think it should be. So it's like interesting to be able to identify and be like, someone has chosen that I will see more of one thing than another thing.
Yeah.
And so to be able to recognize that and be like, I would like to expose myself to more of this thing rather than what they've chosen, I should say.
Yeah. It was just like, I'd rather see, because, the AFL runs all the time, and it's not every year that the World Cup is on, and not every year that Australia advances and does extremely well. And so it's like a bit, why are you putting the AFL more, or like why are you filtering AFL into 7 pages and not the World Cup?
I think this is a really good word for those of us listening or watching to hear, where we haven't maybe considered this before, particularly how the news that we're engaging with, if we're just passive about the way that we're doing it, what you were saying before, Brooke, about how people have an agenda and a reason that we are watching or scrolling or listening to something when we are doing it. And if we're passive about our news consumption and not thoughtful about it, we kind of aren't aware of this whole conversation that we've been having for the last 5 minutes. And so this is and should be, I think, an encouragement to be deliberate and intentional about thinking about what you're kind of consuming as far as news, and talking to your parents or your kind of social networks about that as well can be a really helpful and positive thing. So,
and like that reminds me of, I'm pretty sure it was Benny who preached it, maybe this year, who knows, saying like everyone is being discipled towards something. And even if you don't recognize it, like you are being discipled towards something, so you can actively choose what you're being discipled towards, which, yes, be discipled towards Jesus, but also all areas of your life will be influencing you. So it's either active or passive, but you will be being pulled in a direction. Like there's nowhere in life where there's no tide. Like nothing is stagnant. Everything is pushing you towards a decision or an opinion. So yeah, it's good to be aware.
Cool. Good chats, guys. We're going to have a quick interlude from seriousness and play a little, like literally a 1-minute game.
Literally.
It's not going to be 1 minute,
It's
but I'm excited for a game.
Figuratively a 1 minute game.
I'm actually scared.
Sam found this cool website which has actually so many ads on.
When Sam finds it, it's not
That
actually a
was
cool
rude.
website.
I haven't heard him say what he said.
Which
Excuse me.
in the on the mobile version has an incredible amount of ads. Speaking of media that you're consuming, of events that happened this year, and I'm gonna.
That was a big breath in, Odds.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna list a few events, and I'm also gonna. I'm gonna list a few events, and some of them might be from 2023, and some of them might not be, and you have to tell me which ones are from 2023 or are not.
Team game, individual game.
Yeah.
You can individual.
Oh,
Audrey's like,
I'm
I plan
sorry.
on beating
Audrey
you.
wants to
doesn't
win.
want to
No,
be
no, no.
held down by Brooke and I.
Brooke
She-
and I just love games, and we love being competitive.
I thought you were about to
Okay.
say, Brooke and I don't want to be held down by Sam. And I was like, facts.
I was expecting
That
that as well.
also.
I've literally just said all the news apps that I read. It was a
All right.
vote for wanting me on your team. Go, Lachie.
All right, first one. So, yeah, whether they're from this year or not.
Wait, hasn't Sam read this?
No. I
But
found
you
the
found
website. Yeah, but I don't know. I didn't read the whole
Found the
thing.
website and didn't look at it.
I didn't read the whole thing.
Something seems
just
a bit
saw the-
suspicious to me.
The headline. That's right. He may have forgotten.
Is that fishy?
No,
Right.
it's
I don't
not.
want to play.
Lachie,
There's,
play
there's
the
one or
game.
two that Sam might know. This is
not,
more than a minute
This
already.
is not scripted.
Okay. Rock singer Ozzy Osbourne has retired from touring.
I don't know who that is.
He's 74.
You don't know who Ozzy Osbourne is?
So, no.
Oh, that's fair. This year or not this year?
It's a niche piece of news. Did you see
This
that?
year.
Super
Did you
niche.
know
This
that
year.
happened before Lachie said that just then?
Nope.
Yeah. So
My
we got,
vote
This
this year. Wait, are we still individual?
apparently, yeah.
Okay, this year.
Purely.
Just sitting over here. Yeah,
Alright,
sure, 2023.
It was this year. It was February 1st this year.
I saw it on
Knew
the Daily
it.
Oz.
You saw it on the Daily Oz?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
why. Get your info from the Daily Oz.
Still
Alright.
doesn't know who Ozzy Osbourne is.
No.
Wait, I'm just going to turn my brightness down because I don't know if Brooke can see my phone on it.
I cannot.
What
Great.
is that like? One of the more newsworthy things on this website? Because
I know, because that is some niche rock music.
okay,
But also,
maybe-
if it's too newsworthy, it'd be too obvious as a question for this.
Okay. Croatia replaces its national currency, the kuna, with the euro.
Didn't know Croatia had a currency called the kuna.
Last
But I love
year.
it.
Not this year.
Nah, 2023.
I don't know. Let's go with Sam.
January 1st, 2023.
You
Very
January
recent.
1st.
Yeah, yeah.
So close.
I
On
for
the-
a
on the
moment
cusp.
forgot which way you voted. I only knew that I voted with you, so I just waited for your reaction. I was like, is he happy? He's happy. I got it. Well done.
All right, next one. The FBI publicly confirmed that they believed COVID-19 originated in a lab in Wuhan, China.
Last year.
Yeah, surely 2022.
Yeah.
How long are the FBI taking?
Are they meant to be smart?
Don't they
What's
have lots
happened?
of money?
That was from February 28, 2023.
I should not go
So
with the
now
crowd
my
next
strategy
time.
is just look at your eyes and work out if you're making something up in your head as to whether this is 2023 or not.
Okay,
Oh, are you making some of these up?
maybe.
No,
No, they're
as
from
in
the
like,
game.
but all of these he's just read off the website.
Can we
So
just
if
get
it
a-
takes a bit
I've
longer,
listed.
oh, okay.
bunch.
Oh, okay.
So I've taken other
sorry.
things.
Oh, sorry.
I've got them. Okay,
Let's get a temperature check
Sorry,
on the blush
FBI,
on
that
Lockie's
I
cheeks.
doubted you as well.
that's all right. I forgive you. Thank you.
I was apologising to the FBI.
Are
Actually,
you the
not
FBI?
Yeah. Oh,
We wouldn't know.
snap.
We could all be the FBI.
Next question.
So fair. Okay, next question. Former US President Donald Trump is formally accused of mishandling classified documents.
That was last year.
This year.
Yeah, when they took them from Mar-a-Lago last year.
Yeah, I think that was last year from his Florida house.
It was June 8, 2023.
Yuck.
As
See,
in like
this is
no
what
to
happens.
the no to the case, but yes to
This
me
is what
winning.
happens when there is so much news in your life. Is
True.
something that happened quite recently. Seems like last year.
But also, I'm then questioning, like, formally. I'm like, because is that when his mugshot came out? Because that was this year. But when they
Maybe.
seized all the documents,
When they raided his
That
house,
was
I thought that
last
was
year.
last year. Yeah.
or earlier.
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure out the pattern that Lockie's going.
Audrey's like, just going.
Audrey's like,
whatever you're not
I
saying.
teach maths, so I'm about
All right.
patterns.
Next one.
Mm.
Famous singer
Ozzy Osbourne, no,
Tina Turner dies.
this year.
this year.
May 24, 2023. Very good.
Cue
Rest in peace.
the best. Play the best.
Those
right
are actually all the interesting ones I had.
Tribute.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys noticed all of them for 2023 in the last
Yeah.
year, but you guys voted a lot of previous.
Okay, well, I didn't know it was a trick question game.
So
But it was
Well,
a fun game.
If it was a real game,
It
yeah.
was fun for me.
Power moving us.
No, but you were right, Sam, when you said like it shows you how much news we read and how much we consume, that even things from like June this year, we go, oh, that was like years ago, right? So just to get you thinking and thinking about how you process stuff
How little we care about Ozzy
and
Osbourne.
how you care about Ozzy Osbourne.
Didn't know who
he is. We'll not research who he is later. We are gonna
listen to his songs.
We are going to take a short break on the Crossway Youth podcast, and we will be back shortly with more news, entertainment, and sports. And we're back. We are back talking about the news, and we're going to talk a little bit to finish off for the last few minutes about global citizenship. A couple of longer words. Do you guys?
Can you spell that out?
I absolutely can, and I absolutely will not live on a podcast. If I was to say what is a global citizen, what would you both, or what would all three of you say?
Someone who contributes to the welfare of the world.
Wow, she's not reading that off a website. Can
Someone
confirm.
who is aware of the global news as well.
A citizen of the globe.
That's a cop-out.
Yeah, correct. That's because I
Shame.
liked your answer best, Brooke.
Thanks.
Hey, my answer was pretty good.
Yours was my second
Someone
favorite
who is
answer.
aware. Big pause.
Aware
about
of
the Earth.
Just aware.
aware of just things happening in the globe, in the Earth.
Great. All of those are good answers, actually. And
Do you have a definition for us?
no, I don't.
Oh,
Maybe
great.
Lachie
Do you
can
want me-
fact
I'll
check
look
for
one
us
up
as
while
I
you,
talk.
yeah,
A
go.
global citizen. And you may have heard the term before. You may have heard it for the first time right now. But the reason that we wanted to reflect on it is we talked a bit about the news and working out to digest how we read the news. Have you got a definition, Lachie, before we move
Yep,
on?
this one is from Oxfam. Is that a reputable news source?
Can you go to the Daily Oz?
It's
Okay.
not
I
a
thought you
news
were going to
source,
go
but
for the Oxford
go for
English
it.
Dictionary.
Oh, but
I'd also be
if
okay
they've
with that.
got-
But Oxfam's good.
Whatever. A global citizen is someone who is aware
Oh,
and
my
understands
goodness.
the wider world and their place in it.
Well done.
I just wanted to say that the fact
Audrey
that
Yang,
I wanted to
everyone.
pause on someone who is aware.
Applause, sound
I'm
effect.
just saying,
That
They
also
have an
you-
applause.
it
when
goes
you
for so
are-
long, by the way.
aware.
She
Yep.
just mic dropped,
Scene.
or the equivalent of
Done.
mic dropped. But the reason we're talking about it is we've talked about consuming news for us individually and thinking deeply about how we do that and being deliberate and intentional and not passive about the way that we do it. But being a global citizen is important so that we think about problems and challenges and news that happens around the world and the circumstances of other people around the world. And so we're broadening our horizons outside of, for us here in Melbourne, Victoria, eastern suburbs of Melbourne, Victoria, we can often be pretty occupied with what is relevant to our location and our demographic that we exist in. And we have to be deliberate sometimes to think outside of that and to seek out information around that. Would you guys reflect that you are a global citizen, try to be a global citizen? Is there anything that you can think of right now that you would say, this is why I am one, or this is why I care about things happening around the world beyond just what is kind of specific to me and my demographic and my life stage? Global citizenship, do you think you are one? I just said 7 questions. I'm gonna pull it down.
I
Do
was
you
just
think
waiting to see how long.
do you think
I
Keep
see
it
your
going.
face, you
Keep
were like-
rolling.
Brooke started squinting more and more and more as I was talking, and she
I
was
was
like,
like, wow,
where-
I've lost the question.
where the heck is he going with this?
I think
Are you a global citizen?
I think with your question, do you try to be a global citizen? Yeah, I could probably say yes to that one. Funny talking about Audrey's question, are you or someone who is aware, and what you were saying earlier. Like, I think I try to get my news intake as well from lots of different sources. Like I was saying, following a lot of different news websites, not so that I can have access to the most news possible, but like to some extent, actually, yes, so that I'm aware of like what is everyone saying about either the same topic, because you get then different angles on one piece of information, but then also a good spread of information. So just trying to stay like, hey, what's happening in the world, and like, even if it isn't directly relevant to me, just because then, when like discourse comes up and there's, people talking about things, or if it does start affecting us, you've got that context, you've got that understanding already, and just having a wide, even if it's not necessarily a super deep awareness on everything, just having that awareness of what's going on. Yeah, that word is probably going to be used a bunch in this segment.
I kind of wonder if it's an outdated concept to have to try to be a global citizen at this point in time. If you're a digital native on social media. So I'm like, when I was early teens, mum and dad would watch the news every night and they'd hear about international stuff and blah, blah, blah. And Facebook only had the people I knew because we just migrated from MySpace. And so you weren't getting news and blah, blah, blah on there. So I wasn't a global citizen unless I chose to be. Whereas now I don't even have to choose to be. It just so happens that I will open my feed and get news about Gaza, get news about blah, blah.
Forced to be aware about things.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like, I don't know if you need to be as intentional anymore. I think you're forced into global awareness just based on what everyone else is seeing.
But even just like the escalation things, like how fast social media can get to like getting behind something, or just like reaching out and putting out all that information somewhere. Like it'll either be like a news outlet will do it, and then like a celebrity would get onto it, and then from that celebrity they repost it on their story, and then thousands of other people will repost it on theirs, and then that's like where all the information comes up. And it's like it does force you. It's like all the news about Israel, like I would just like go on my Instagram stories and I'll click, next, and it'll just be Israel, Gaza. Yeah. Just like it does force you to be a global citizen.
So if we're forced into it, then I guess dovetailing off that, and I think one of the main questions that people will have around global news and really significant stuff that we see on our phones when we open them in the morning is sometimes there's pretty significant things that we hear about or consume where we don't necessarily know as teenagers, young adults in Melbourne, Australia, what can we do about what we're seeing? And what is our responsibility when we see something like that? Take the warfare that is happening in Israel at the moment. It's bombarding our social media platforms. It's frequent topics of conversation around lunch tables and all that sort of stuff. We're hearing it on the radio. We're listening to it on podcasts. But we are not the head of the Israeli military, or we are not working in the Pentagon, or maybe we're working in the FBI. We don't know. But we do not hold positions where we would necessarily go, I can do something about this, me, now, interacting with this news. And that's the vast majority of people around the world, right? Is interacting with news and going, I don't necessarily know, like, what's my responsibility in looking at this? And sometimes we feel paralyzed by that, right? Sometimes we can feel paralyzed and really want to do something about it, but not know how to. That's one response. Another response can just be kind of indifference, really, because we don't know how to respond, and so we become desensitized potentially because it's such a problem, and how could I do anything to change it? I think that's a real thing that we think about when we read things on the news like this, or there's a significant referendum happening in Australia coming up on the weekend. The voting's happening actually, and we'll get the results maybe when this podcast is coming out, around the voice to parliament, and that's another significant thing where we go, I have a vote, but how much of a difference does little me make in a country with tens of millions of people? So I'm going to try and distill all of this down to a small question again for you, Brooke.
Go.
I think all of us was just like, look, I can see you're unhappy.
So the question is, what, for you guys in your experience in your life, when you see a big problem or a big thing on the news and you don't necessarily know how you can make a difference in it, what do you do? How do you respond to big problems or big things on the news, and how do you operate as a global citizen within that?
I feel like I've got a live example of when something feels like it's super distant and out of my control, like what's happening in Israel. And I'm like, I don't know anyone who's living there. Like, this feels far from me. So then you're just kind of like, so I'm just aware of it. But then you see the protests happening in New South Wales when the Sydney Opera House lit itself up in the colours of the Israel flag. And then there were a lot of Palestinian people choosing to protest. And then I don't think it was the majority of the protesters, but there was a small group choosing to chant things like death to the Jews. So like pretty,
full on confronting. Yeah.
Really confronting stuff, which you see that and you're like, okay, still far from me. I'm not part of that community. And then seeing a friend that I used to work with at an agency, and she's a Jewish girl, posting about, it's been a pretty full-on week for me. So here are some lighthearted things that I found gave me hope this week. And then being like, nothing is actually that far from home. Like, you always have many degrees of connection from something significant that's happening. To be like, of course, this Jewish friend is finding it really confronting that there are protesters chanting death to the Jews while her home, she's not from Israel, but obviously the Jews have a connection to Israel like no other people group do. So this is hitting home for her in Melbourne. And I was like, oh, okay, nothing's ever actually that far from you once you realise we're all humans having a human experience. So this is really affecting someone, most likely someone in my life.
Yeah, and a really simple, practical response is to be aware of that and to care for that person if you know them as well, right? There's only a couple of degrees separation at any point in time. I'm interested in your guys' thoughts on this as well. Like, how do you respond to big things where you don't necessarily know how you can have a hand in changing it?
I think as a young person and with access to lots of digital platforms, like even like TikTok or Snapchat, Instagram, if any of you are still on Facebook, then Facebook, it obviously has its pros and cons, and one of the best things with it is the utilization of raising awareness through it. And so when like big things do happen, or even just like significant days, say for instance like World Mental Health Day, or even like Are You OK Day that happened recently, would just be to just continue to raise awareness and just have conversations with parents, which actually might seem scary, but the more that you have those conversations with friends and with family, with parents as well, the more that those stigma goes down in a way, and just like the more awareness you can get does more than you think, I think.
Well, yeah, and that makes me think there's a big difference between giving yourself information and giving yourself knowledge that you can act on. And so if as soon as you can take like a global event or like a day in the calendar, like Are You OK Day, there's one thing to watch it happen, and there's one thing to be like, okay, this will now inform how I'm going to behave, and I'm going to behave differently because of it, which is similar. Like, I can just watch what's happening in a war, or I can be like, oh, now I know someone that I care about is impacted by this, and it can change how I behave. So I don't have the power to change a war over the other side of the world, but I do have the power to change the way someone's feeling about this thing. We don't have the power to get rid of all mental health problems, but we do have the power to check in on our friend that we know is having a tough time right now.
100%.
So you can sort of be like, I don't have the power for everything, but I'm not powerless.
I have a sphere of influence. How can I be Jesus? We're followers of Jesus here at the Crossway Youth Podcast. How can I be Jesus in my sphere of influence? You're not powerless. It's good.
Yeah.
And in every aspect of life, sorry, Lachie.
No, you're good.
But in every aspect of life, there is always a way that you can be Jesus, and just be the light of the world and be that city on a hill kind of thing. Even just to like showing your friends on like Are You OK Day, and not just taking, yes, the day is important, but also going past that day and going like, you know what, I actually feel like my friend is not okay, even if it's not on that specific day, and just reaching out and being like, yeah, how can I help you? What can I do to like lighten your load, or just like chat to me. I'm all ears.
I was going to say, like, sorry, that's all really good stuff, and I'm going to go on a different tangent with the question, if that's okay. So
I was going to say they're terrible opinions.
No, I'm kidding.
Aware.
So in terms of like, what can you do when you like, or how can you influence or be a global citizen in those situations? I think another thing as well is, and this kind of goes back to the being forced to be a global citizen as well, is it's like when there's in a situation like the war, right, where there's so many different angles or opinions or things coming out, and like we're talking about sphere of influence, right? Like if you go, I really want to do something about this, when you can't go and influence the war, and this is kind of also degrees of separation, right? One of the best things that you can do is spread awareness. If people aren't engaged with the news, force them to engage by being a news source in that way. So if like going, what's the best thing to know about this situation? How can we be Jesus, and what's that angle, and then being that source. So like posting on Instagram, like, or sharing a post that's like a really good piece of information about what's going on. Be that like additional source of information for people who aren't aware of what's going on. And then maybe somewhere down that like chain, if you share something that's really good, and then the person sees it and shares something that's really good, and person sees it and shares something that's really good, and then the president of the United States sees that information and goes, oh, I can do something about that. So even if you personally don't have the ability to stop a war, maybe somewhere down that information chain, someone does. So being that like awareness spreader, I think is a good thing to, if you want like a practical, I want to do something.
And like the whole world is only made up of individuals. There's no like superhuman. Everyone's just a person. Everyone's just a person making a decision. So I think we give up a lot of our power when we think the decisions I make don't make a difference. It's like, no, every person is just making decisions. Even the big person at the head of the boardroom table is still a person. Genuinely. Yep. So it's, you sort of, it's choosing to be a doormat to the world when you think, I have no power, because I think that's rubbish. Everyone has power.
Guys, in closing, one tip you would give to our audience on how they engage with the news or how they interact with the news. What have you found helpful in your lives? What was something you started doing that you wish you started doing 5 years earlier? What's something you stopped doing that you're really glad you stopped doing? What's a tip that you would have for people about kind of news engagement?
My tip would be to follow the Daily Oz.
We are not paid by them.
No, not at all. We're
surprisingly,
not
based on the amount of times we've mentioned them today.
If you want to,
sponsored by them. We can try. Brooke and I will try later. But if you just don't like reading newspapers, I think, which might also seem like an old person thing to do. So if you're a young person out there and you're just like, I don't have any newspapers around, I don't have access to a newspaper, or like you rarely go to a cafe and you rarely see those headlines sitting on the table or something like that, then I would definitely, my number one tip would just to be follow the Daily Oz on Instagram or Facebook, or subscribe to the newsletter, which you can get every single morning. And that's just a great way to stay in the loop. And they provide the information in a way that's not boring. Like, it's not a black and white newspaper. It's got pictures. It's actually very aesthetic and engaging content. So, yeah.
I agree. I think my advice would be, don't let the news of the world overwhelm you. Like, be able to take it and say, this is information to me. I only say that out of like, I've been in the place where I was like, this is too much news and now I want zero news because I think the world is bad news right now. I think don't let the news of the world overwhelm you. Choose how much you consume because you can choose that. So like you can choose to just follow specific news sites rather than following everything and then being like, ugh. So choose how much you consume, and then also be able to have like a different lens on it by being able to be like is always a humbling thing for me to try and remind myself whenever I read stuff about politics or people that I really disagree with and be like, made in the image of God.
Yeah.
Jesus died on the cross for them. But genuinely being able to look at things and be like, oh, each and every person, made in the image of God, to be like, okay, it's another human. That is a decision of another human, so that it also doesn't become some giant that you're like, no one can ever change this. You're like, it's another human made in the image of God. Are they a fallen human? Sure. Are they a great human? Sure. But just being able to right size what's happening in the world so that you don't feel so insignificant and overwhelmed by it.
Lachie?
I think mine would be read past the headline. I think especially the way that news is promoted on like things like social media, everything is clickbait, including the title of this podcast episode. But that's intentional, right? Like you make clickbaity headlines or like subtitles just to bring people in or just to like catch the attention. And so often, especially if we're like scrolling on something, we'll read the headline, go, oh, wow, and then keep scrolling. So if there's like a piece of like a headline that you see that's like really controversial or crazy or outlandish or something, like actually read the article. Don't take the headline as the piece of news, but the content as the piece of news. Like, you know, you can't say you've read Lord of the Rings if you just look at the front cover and go, the Lord of the Rings. Okay, cool. You know, like you don't necessarily know what it's about. You can make a bunch of different stories about what that means. So when you see a headline, read the whole article and then do it based on that. Don't be a headline scroller.
It's good.
Really good tips, guys. Thank you. And hopefully that's been helpful for you watching or listening, just to consider, you know, there's a lot of news out there. Brooke said it before, it's constant. It can be overwhelming at times, but we hope that you're able to have spaces where you can be kind to your head and your heart in the way that you consume news and manage that and become aware of the world and be a global citizen and acknowledge, okay, what's my responsibility here to respond to this? So thanks for listening. You can follow us at the CY Pod on social media platforms. You can watch us on YouTube. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
See you then.